Good morning, good morning. It is very early in the morning, and because it is so early, I thought I would wake myself up with some cider. Uh, Not the sweet apple cider, the sweet IP cider, right? With slashes, prefixes, slashes, slash 24, slash 16, slash 26, slash 30, also known as classless inter-domain routing, okay? So there will be no hands-on today. I just figured, hey, you should be able to kind of recognize a CIDR IP address, what it looks like, uh, understand a little bit of what it means, and then how to set it up a bit, okay? So CIDR is a method for allocating IP addresses efficiently by allowing a variable length subnet masking. So it's a lot more flexible than the old classes, the ABC. It's more flexible because you can, if you don't need 255 IP addresses, you can take some away, make them for the network, and maybe you only need what? Maybe you only need four IP addresses. Maybe you only need two host IP addresses, right? So you can do a slash 30 CIDR IP, and then you'll be able to do that, and it'll save a lot of IPs and a lot of routing table usage. So CIDR notation represents the number of bits used for the network portion, right? So if you see 192.168.1.0/24, you know that because all IPs, addresses IP4s, have 32 bits, right? There are 8 bits in 4 octets, 8, 16, 24, 32 bits, right? So if you see the slash 24, that means the first 24, 8, 6, 24 are for the network, and the last 8 are for the hosts. Now, this one, you'll see a lot because it's exactly like Class C, right? If you notice, the first three are your network, the last is your host. Exactly like a C. Another one you'll also see, no, well, not as much, but still, especially in examples, you'll see this as well because it's exactly like a Class B. The first 16, 816 are for the network, the last 16 for the host, right? That good old 65,000, whatever amount of IPs that you can use from this that you'll never need. Uh, so now let's see this table. So you can create a table so you have an idea. Again, you'll never see anything lower than this slash 16, really ever, because needing more than this is just not necessary. I don't even know if people need this, really. Uh, but yeah, if you want to make a table with lower than 16, go ahead, do it. If that's how you get your kicks, why not? So let's practice a little bit with this one because this one is nice and easy, right? So you're wondering what is this and how do we get this from this? Okay, well I'm here to show you. It's easy. I'm not a math whiz, and I can do it. I can understand it. If I can understand it, you can understand it. No problem. Okay. So we know IP4s have 32 bits, right? So, if you used every single bit for the network, it would look like this. And of course, you're never going to see that, right? It would look like that. So, if we have a slash 30, like the first one here, what you're doing with this is you're minusing, right? Because you're seeing how many bits are used for the network. So you're just minusing this from 32. So this CIDR IP would look like, what's 32 minus 30 equals 2, right? Because you're gonna have the last 2 bits for the hosts. and the first 30 for the network. Now from there, to get your total IPs, you're just going to go 2 with the power of 2, and that's going to equal 4. So now you have your total IPs that you can use, right? Now to get your usable IPs, because of course your first IP is always going to be your network IP, like when you see that 192.168.1.0, that IP is always, you're never going to use it because it's the network IP, right? And the last IP out of the 4 will always be your broadcast IP. So from here, once you get your total IPs, you're just going to minus that. I'm going to suck my teeth at that. You're going to minus that by 2 because you're minusing the network IP and the broadcast IP, right? And you'll get 2. So here are your usable IPs for this CIDR notation. Or if you want to do another one, we'll do slash 26. So you see this a lot, right? Slash 26. You'll see this a lot in examples. Again, because it's no, not 26. It's 24. Because this is like the Class C one, right? The first 24, the first 3 octets. So for the network, the last octet is for the host. So if we do 32 minus 24, we get 8. All right. And now, if we do 2 to the power of 8, because remember the answer that you get from here, you're doing to the power of 2 every time. That's the step there. Equals, let's see, 2, 4, 8, 16, 24. Or no. 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, and then 256. All right. So you got your 256. Now from that, just to get, so this is the total, right? Just like a class C, like we said. This is the total. Now you're gonna get rid of your network IP and your broadcast IP to find out the usable ones, the usable IPs that you have, that you can delegate to the hosts, right? Minus 2 equals 254. There you go. So in a slash 24 CIDR, your usable IPs are 254. Total 256. And I mean, when you create a table like this for yourself, I mean, you can go lower than slash 16. You're never going to see it in real life because people don't really need more than this. If you get your kicks that way, please don't let me stop you. Do it. So you've just seen kind of the math behind it. This kind of goes through, it explains again. Okay, so you have your hosts and then the broadcasts, right? The network, the hosts, and the broadcast. It's another example. Okay, so supernetting. This allows multiple networks to be combined into a supernet to reduce routing table entries, right? So instead of doing the old having 2 different Class C networks, you can combine them, right? So instead of using a 1 and a 2, you can just start at 0, take away a bit, for your hosts. I mean, you're going to take away a bit from your network and you're going to add it to your host. So you're going to go from 24 to 23. And you can just combine it. Boom. And you'll be able to use this all the way to that in one subnet, right? And supernet instead of having two separate subnets. So practical applications, I mean, ISPs will assign different subnets, different sizes to customers based on their needs, of course. Corporate networks efficiently allocate subnets to different departments, right? It's always about efficiency for these guys. Routing optimization, of course, because then you need less routing table entries. Uh, let's do a little something else here. So we'll use this one as an example. Let's see how we can make a few subnets here. So let's say with this one, 26, right? So we're going to use the slash 26. So you'll do, just to figure it out, let's go through it quick again. You'll do 32 minus 26. That equals 6. And then you'll do 2 to the power of 6 equals 64. Minus 2 equals 62. Okay, so you have your usable and your hosts. So now when you are setting up different subnets, you're like, oh, I need more than one subnet. I need two, I need three. They're all going to come one right after the other. So let's say you start with your network like that, right? So this is going to be your network IP, one of the unusable ones, right? One of your total, but it's not usable. So that's going to be your network. Now, if we go to the hosts for your for this subnet, you will start at .1.1, right? And this is of course going to be your gateway, and you can go all the way to 168.1. Let's get this more on the screen here. .1, and you'll get to .62 with this one, right? Because the total number that you have is 64 minus 62. So you're just gonna have 62 numbers here. That's all. And then of course the last one that you have, which is your broadcast, will be .63. So now when you're creating a new subnet, you're just gonna start with the number right after this. So your next subnet will start with 192.168.1.64. There it is. And then you will have your hosts. Your hosts will be .1.65 to 1 dot, what's 65 plus 62? So 65 plus 60 is 125, and then plus 2 is 127, right? So you'll have your host 1.65 to 1.127. Now, and then your broadcast will be .128, right? And then the next subnet would start with 192.168.1.129, and your first host would start with dot 30, and then you'll add 62 from dot 30, which would give you a 192. So your last host would be dot 192, with the broadcast being dot 193, right? And so on, and so on, and so on. So there's a little bit of adding in there. I mean, you have a calculator on your phone, on your laptop. You can just use that and you can do this pretty simply. It's just remembering the steps, right? You're remembering that there's one that's always going to be the network, and then there's the number that you're going to have usable that you can use for hosts, with the second unusable being the broadcast. Once you get that, then you've got it. Then you've got it. You're down. So I mean, the most important things about CIDR: recognize it with the slash. Know that slash 24 and slash 16 are class C and class B, because I mean, those in the examples, you'll see those most often. Uh, just know the steps to get the total and the usable, and know that when you're creating the subnets, you're starting with the network, you're doing your hosts, and then the last one is the broadcast. And again, I recommend starting with, let's do it while we're here. If we do slash 30, just start with slash 30 because it's the easiest, right? So as we know, we're going to have 4 total. We're going to have 2 usable. So if we start, what are we going to start with? Well, so if we start with 192.168.1.1.0, our network, right? We're going to go to hosts. So this will start with 1.1, and we're going to go all the way to 1.2 with our final, the broadcast being 1.3. So if we have that, our next subnet that we create for, let's say, the sales department, it would start with 1.4, right? And then your hosts would be 1.5 to 1.6, with your broadcast being 1.7, and then the network below would be, we would start with 1.8, that would be the network IP. Your your hosts would be 1.9 to 1.10, with the broadcast being 1.11, and so on and so on. So I mean, you can try, with this one first, just because it's easy. You don't have to think about like, oh, how many is this plus 192. You just do this. Oh, what's this plus one? All right. Here's your 2 usable. There's your 4 total IPs, 2 usable, right? Simple dimple. And of course, I recommend, if you are getting into this just for study purposes, make a table. Make a table for yourself so you can instantly see it. Okay, summary. CIDR replaces class-based addressing, allows flexible subnetting using prefix notation, e.g., yeah, of course, and help in IP address conservation and route aggregation. And that's it, that's all. So you understand CIDR a little bit more. You can recognize prefixes. Now when you see a slash something, you know what it is. You know what's a CIDR. You know kind of how to calculate the bits that are being used for the network, and how to get the total and usable IPs for whichever CIDR IP you're using. And you kind of know how a subnet table will look if you created one, right? With the first being the network, then you got your hosts, and of course the last always has to be the broadcast. It's not that hard. Trust me, once you get it, you'll get it. So simple. I got no picture for you. You did awesome. You did amazing. I know it's early for math, but hey, I hope you have yourself a great day. Take it easy.